Hello boys and girls, Bored now back with another horror movie review for the month of October, and this time I'm returning to the Halloween franchise. So this is going to be Halloween 2, the first of the sequels from 1981. And this is quite a rare thing in a horror sequel because it actually follows on from the events of the night of the original film, and I mean literally the events of the same night. So it's almost quite serialized in that sense. It's quite like the sort of thing you might see on television, but in a film. So it literally picks up where Carpenter's original left off. So that's quite an interesting idea and quite effective, I sort of think. So Carpenter apparently wasn't that keen on writing a sequel, but he did it anyway. So he's the screenwriter alongside Deborah Hill, who of course was involved heavily in the first film. And this time Rick Rosenthal is the director, and he has a bit of horror pedigree. Directed another one of the Halloweens later on. I think one of the ones that Resurrection, it was seen as a sort of a lesser Halloween, but he does a pretty solid job with this one anyway. So I'm going to get into it because I think overall it's a very solid horror sequel. It was never quite going to live up to the classic, which is the original Halloween, and there are issues with it which I'll discuss, but on the whole, it's pretty solid. It's still pretty scary. There's some good kills in there, and it's quite a tight little story as well. There's some enjoyment to be had. Again, you have obviously the characters returning from the same from the first film, so that helps as well. I will say it's actually a different actor playing Michael Myers in this Halloween. Michael Myers, otherwise known as The Shape. It's not Nick Castle, who was in the first film. It's actually Dick Warlock, and he was the stunt guy on the film. So it was funny because I rewatched this today, when I was watching the credits at the end of this Halloween 2, you actually see Dick Warlock's name about 3 or 4 times, so he's sort of doing a bit of everything on this film. But he stepped into the role as Michael Myers because Nick Castle didn't want to return. Apparently, at the time, he was looking at a career in directing. That's what I read anyway on the wiki page. So surely it can't be wrong if it's on the wiki page. But there you have it. Nick Warlock steps into the role. Besides that, the main parts are the same. So you have Jamie Lee Curtis returning as Laurie Strode. You have Donald Pleasance, of course, back as Loomis. And I think in this film you get even more of Loomis than you do in the first film. You really get a sense of his desperation. You get more of his character. And yeah, so I'm going to get into it. So I think one of the things I don't like so much about the film is that it drags a little bit at the beginning. I think so it starts off again in Huddersfield, and you actually get a flashback which actually makes it feels very much like a TV show. So it just gives you the last few minutes of the previous Halloween, which nothing wrong with that, but you can also tell, I think it's stock footage. You can tell it's been used. And actually, I thought I did notice 1 or 2 differences between, almost like they'd reshot it maybe. I sort of thought then in the original, Loomis is, after he's done his line with Laurie, I thought he then looked out and looked at the space where Michael was, and Michael was gone, and he knew straight away he'd gone. Whereas in this, it has him running down the stairs, and that's the first time he realizes he's gone. So I could be wrong on that, but that seemed to be a slight. But it didn't matter anyway. It's, just a quick recap, and I think it's just a way to get you straight into the film to sort of, so that it's a smooth transition into the film sort of thing, into the new story. And I kind of dig the opening. I like they use Mr. Sandman on the opening credits, so I really like that. And you have great horror song, and you have like the jack-o'-lantern, the pumpkin at the start on the credits, which has become really synonymous with the Halloween franchise. So it's a good way to open. The music isn't as good in this, so you have sort of a synth version of the original theme. So it's still good, but it's not quite the same versions, and the original version is definitely the best. So I like them using Mr. Sandman, but a lot of the music feels, inferior to the original film, but still some pretty good choices. So yeah, I think if there are bits you could cut from the film, I think it is like these early scenes in Haddonfield. So it's already made the point at the end of Halloween 1 that Michael has disappeared and he could be anywhere. He's stalking Haddonfield. He could strike anywhere. And they just sort of telegraphed that point again, whereas they could have just moved on with the plot sort of thing and gotten into the whole thing with him going after Laurie, to try and finish her off, and the whole thing at the hospital. Some of the stuff in the town I think is fair enough, and it does add to this. It adds to the theme. So the stuff with Loomis is really good, and Donald Pleasance is really hamming it up in this film to great effect. And it works because the idea is that he's getting more and more desperate, more and more crazed. And yeah, his delivery of the lines he makes them really funny, but you also believe in the character as well. And as I said, his desperation. But yeah, he does have some great lines in this. He makes it really entertaining. There's this random line when he's running out, of the house searching for Michael, and he's still got the gun in his hand, and this neighbour has this really weird line, we've been trick-or-treated to death tonight, and Loomis just screams, "You don't even know what death is." And he has some corking lines throughout the film. So we see again things from Michael's POV point of view, similar to how we did at times in the first Halloween. So we see him like watching Loomis from a distance, and Loomis getting all frantic and screaming, "I killed him! I shot him 6 goddamn times! He is evil!" That kind of stuff. All really, really great stuff. All really straining his like vocal cords, just getting all frantic and sweaty. It's just awesome stuff. Loomis is a badass in this film, and that's proven no more than in a later scene. So later on, he's picked up by the nurse from the ward because she's come to get him. She's with like a marshal, and apparently Loomis, because he's been blamed for Michael escaping and not bringing him back, and things have gotten out of hand. So like I think it's like the mayor or something has made the decision, and Loomis must be brought back. So a marshal's come with the nurse to bring him back, but Loomis just takes control, and it's when, and I might as well talk about this now because it's one of the most annoying things of the film, of the franchise. It's certainly probably the worst things of this film, and it's one of the worst examples of retconning you'll ever see. So the nurse reveals to Loomis then there's a file which has been like sealed for years, and that now, because of everything, they've decided to unseal it conveniently. And the file reveals that Laurie is Michael's sister, and that's why Michael has returned to Huddersfield. That's why he's after Laurie. It's like he killed his other sister at a young age, and now he wants to complete the set, if you like, and kill off Laurie. And it's absolute bullshit. So they say, then Laurie's parent, because the story is that Laurie was then adopted at a young age, so she doesn't know that Michael's her brother. But then the Strodes, wanted the file sealed. So Loomis, who's done all this research on Michael, has known him for years. Apparently doesn't know this, but it's awful. It's retconning, and it's the sort of thing where it's made worse because they didn't mention it in the original film. And if they had done, it at least wouldn't have been so clunky. But as it is, I still don't like it. I still don't like them giving this motivation to Michael. Because and this sort of is a bit like the Joker film, which came out this week or last week. And it's one of my issues with that film, one of the problems I have with this idea of an origin story for a villain like the Joker. And it's similar here with Michael, this idea you have to give them human motivation, or you have to have reasons why they are messed up, reasons why they are evil. No, you don't. Michael Myers in the first film, The Shape, was just evil because he was evil. There was no explanation, and that's what made him so scary. So yeah, just adding on this ridiculous Laurie is his sister, retconning that in. It's just, it's really weak, and it's very lame, and it's not necessarily. So that's probably the weakest aspects. But anyway, I was bringing that up because Loomis really is a badass in these scenes. So once he finds out that it clicks, then he's going to go after Laurie again, and she's obviously been taken to the local hospital where a lot of the film is set. So he's turned the car around, sort of thing, and the marshal's like, no, I've got my orders. But Loomis just takes control. He's just like Dirty Harry, or like Callahan, whatever his first name is at the clean. Yeah, well, that is Dirty Harry, but whatever his first name, something Callahan anyway. So he's got the gun. And then he just shoots a bullet through the windscreen. He's like, what is it you cops say? Fire a warning or something? So he shoots and he just takes control, like, because when they get back to the hospital, Marion, her name is, he's grabbed hold to her, he's got the gun, and he's like, you shut up and come with me. It's glorious. I love Loomis in this. And Marion, fair play to her, because she has this great moment where she really stands up for herself and takes control, because she phones like the whatever it is, I'm assuming like the local police department or something, to get them over here. And yeah, she actually says, it's Michael Myers, now get your ass over it. So yeah, fair play. Good on Marion as well. Great line for her. But yeah, Loomis has some great lines, and it's a really big. And I think the closure he gets in this, and the whole thing with Michael, really makes the film. So some of the stuff in Haddonfield in the early part of the film is valid. it does add stuff. I mean, I like how Annie's dad, who is of course the sheriff in the town, so he's back for a small sort of cameo, and you see him finding Annie's dead body and his reaction and stuff. So I think that pays off nicely, and it's good to have that because it sells her death more, and he was a character in the first film, so it's nice to see, or it's important anyway, to see his reaction finding his daughter's death. And there's some good social commentary, although they don't do much with it, but there's social commentary about kind of lynch mobs and how the media can sort of drive all this anxiety up, and that's to do with people in Haddonfield. They're actually, sort of upset at one of their own being maimed, being, targeted. So yeah, they're almost it's almost this lynch mob mentality. But yeah, I mean that's not a big thing, but they do sort of flag that up in one scene. So that was quite an interesting touch. And of course you get this whole crazy plot where that Loomis, he's just so unhinged. He just shoots this guy who looks like Michael Myers, and it just turns out to be this guy in a Halloween, like dressed in a Halloween costume, and then he gets set up in flames because I mean it's like a scene from an action movie. This car just comes crashing into him, and boom, it all goes up, and then they have to take him to to get like dental records, just to double check that it's not Michael Myers. And they suspect it isn't because they work out that the teeth is like, it's probably from a 17-year-old, whereas Michael is meant to be 21. But even so, that's such a random and crazy scene because Loomis just flies off the handle. He doesn't really have enough to go on than that is Michael. And but anyway, I guess it works well enough. But it's just this crazy idea. Then he just kills this guy willy nilly, and that they don't really make that much of a big deal of it afterwards. But I guess it's just to raise the stakes a little bit, just to like fake you out a bit, and it then leads to him